Greetings to all, wherever you may be in the world. This is Vicki Hudson with High Road Global Services, and today I want to talk to you about empathy and the role of brain chemistry in a highly divided society. In the US right now, and in so many parts of the world, we are living in highly polarized times. And I'm very privileged to be able to say that I can't remember anything like it in my lifetime. And more than ever, we need empathy and understanding and a willingness to listen. But if those things are so helpful in times like this, why aren't we doing them more often? So I want to share a story that might help answer that question. Once, a few years ago, I was sitting in a restaurant with my family, and as we were eating and chatting, I saw a young man, probably about 18 years old, at the table across from us, eating with his family. And when I looked over at him briefly, I saw that he was staring at me. And I felt a little bit out of sorts, but I just went back to concentrating on my dinner. When I looked up again, he was still staring. Now I was getting uncomfortable. What was the issue, I thought to myself. And as much as I tried to shift my attention back to our table's conversation, I felt this man's eyes boring into me. And then the irritation started to kick in. And the longer he stared, the worse it got. And I whispered to my father, he had better stop staring at me, because as a woman, this is very uncomfortable. But he didn't stop. He kept staring, and I could feel my emotions rise as the minutes ticked by. And in seconds, I came up with all kinds of stories in my head about why this was happening. And after what seemed like an eternity, we finished our meal and we stood up to leave. And we passed the man's table as we left, and he was still staring intently at me. So I took a deep breath and I tried to keep my composure as I said, "Do we know each other?" And the person sitting next to the man, perhaps his father, said, "Was he staring at you?" And I replied, "Yes." And the father said, "I'm so sorry. He's autistic." My world changed. I have close relationships with people on the autism spectrum. How could I have not realized that? All of a sudden, the empathy and the understanding just flowed so naturally. And I responded to the father, "That's okay, I understand." But if the father had never clarified that, I would have walked away with anger at that man. In a divided society, these types of assumptions and reactions are heightened and amplified 1,000 times. And that division tends to compound on itself and kind of grow exponentially. Now, why is that? Because unfortunately, our brains are wired against us. They perceive difference as a threat. So anyone in an out-group has the potential to trigger two responses, either lash out or avoid. And neither is going to help us. Now, we can't solve this issue in a short video, but in every interaction we have, today and every day going forward, we have the choice and the opportunity to reduce division. As Mother Teresa says, do not wait for leaders. Do it alone, person to person. And I'm going to be giving more tips in future blogs, but for now, here are a few things to get started. When you observe or hear something from others that triggers a reaction in you, pause 3 to 4 seconds before responding. Studies show that this gives enough time for the chemicals in the brain to travel from the amygdala, which is kind of that reactive part of the brain, to the neocortex, which is that higher part of the brain that makes better decisions. You can let people know that you're thinking as you pause. You can simply say something like, "Okay, let me think about that for a second," or "Let me pause." Let those 3 seconds go by and then respond. Another thing you can do when something triggers you is ask the question, "What don't I know here?" This opens the brain to possible explanations for situations that you can otherwise stay mired in with all of your assumptions. Next, try to focus on the facts before jumping to an evaluation of a situation. Now, this is much harder than it sounds because our brains naturally want to go to the evaluation of a situation, our feelings about it or our interpretation. But the more we can act like a news reporter and simply report in our brains what we can verify, what we can see, taste, touch, or smell, it opens, again, our brains to potential solutions. Whereas if we jump to the evaluation too soon, we go down the wrong road. Next, I encourage you to listen mindfully when people are speaking, even if they are saying things that trigger you. And by listen mindfully, I mean fully listen with all of your attention to what the other person is saying before formulating a response. Now, again, this is not where the human brain tends to go. This is going to require intentional effort on your part, on all of our part. But again, we have the choice every day to reduce division with these simple yet very difficult things to do. And last, when you do need to speak your truth, do it. If you need to condemn something that is wrong, do it. But remember to condemn ideologies or poor behaviors and not human beings. This is the most difficult task of all, to say that a behavior was wrong, to say that an action was wrong, but that a person is not to be condemned. This is the most difficult task of all, and I try to do it as much as possible, and I fail a good portion of the time. But I think there's something in the effort that can help us to reduce division. Our brains are not the best at dealing with division and polarization, but remember that we are also hardwired to connect with each other. Connection means survival, and even the primitive part of our brain is programmed to reach out to other human beings. These are challenging times, to say the least, but I hope that along with paying attention to our differences, we can bring ourselves back to our common humanity. This is not where we end, but where we start, again and again if necessary. In the meantime, be safe, be well, and hang in there.